What if the food you eat isn't just fueling your body, but actually sending it messages about how you age, how you feel, even how you think? Today, we're unprocessing the confusion about ultra-processed foods and taking back the power to choose what truly nourishes us. We experience 1,000 waking minutes on average every day. How are you spending yours? I'm Dr. Wendy Bazilian, and you're listening to 1,000 Waking Minutes. I can't wait to connect with you here with practical ways to eat well, move daily, and be healthy, to optimize every waking minute you live for a happier, healthier life. Thank you for sharing some of your waking minutes with me today. Let's get started.
I'm saying yes to better days, yes. I'm on my way, yes. It's gonna be okay, yeah.
Welcome back to 1,000 Waking Minutes, where we explore ways to make the most of our time through our small, meaningful choices every day. I'm Dr. Wendy Bazilian, and today we're looking at the fascinating and sometimes confusing world of ultra-processed foods. This topic is everywhere these days, and it's super easy to feel overwhelmed from the headlines, social media, the big debates that are going on. So I'd like to cut through a little bit of the confusion today and get to the heart of what really matters, which is our lives and our choices. So I want to start today by just acknowledging that food is so personal. It's tied to our memories, to our culture, even to our emotions. It's part of our personal identity. In today's world, there are so many foods to choose from, and food labels can feel like a puzzle, and headlines can feel like they have mixed messages. So it can be hard to know what's truly nourishing and what can fit into our lives. So this episode is about understanding ultra-processed foods, also called UPFs, a little bit better, why they matter, how we can use this knowledge in our everyday lives without feeling restricted or overwhelmed. That's the goal. So just one example, I was chatting the other day with some friends about plant-based milk, and one of them said, well, isn't plant-based milk bad because it's considered ultra-processed? And that really simple question opened up a big conversation about how confusing food labels can be and health claims can be on something that so many of us enjoy, like a plant-based milk, whether it comes from soy or chia, new thing on the block, or almond or oat, and it made me realize that many of us are trying to do the right thing. I put that in sort of air quotes. If you can hear me making air quotes right there, the right thing, but we're swimming in a sea of so many choices, and it's hard to navigate at times among those choices. So I want to unravel this together. I want to unprocess this a little with us today. First, I want to rewind our time a bit to 2009 in Brazil, where the NOVA classification system began. This is a system that defined what ultra-processed foods were, and it was in a way that scientists and some policymakers and people in that area could start to categorize foods a little bit differently. It was developed by researchers at the University of Sao Paulo, and the goal was to understand the degree of food processing, not just the ingredients, and their impact potentially on our health. So it was not designed to label foods as good or bad, but to help us see where foods sort of fit along a continuum of processing, a spectrum, the processing spectrum, let's call it. And it became a tool, an important one, for research and policy and conversation about this. So the NOVA system has 4 categories, and I will share them very briefly and describe them to you. But before I do that, you might be wondering, well, what does NOVA stand for? And actually, it's not an acronym. Many of us sort of think in acronyms, and so many things in nutrition that use abbreviations. NOVA sounds naturally like an acronym, but it's just a name. It's a label, in fact, and it was created by the researchers at the University of Sao Paulo back in 2009. So we're going back, 15 plus years to help us understand food processing in a new way. New way because nova in Portuguese and several other languages, by the way, means new. And what was new about this was because we weren't considering, as a whole, this group wasn't considering in the NOVA system the nutrients per se. They weren't considering the macronutrients, to be specific, like protein, carbs, and fat, or even the vitamins and minerals. It was a whole new way of looking at food, not just by its nutrients, but how much it had been processed to get into whatever form that arrived in your shopping cart and basket and into your home and ultimately into your mouths. So maybe this will be a fun dinner conversation tonight. Do you know where the word NOVA came from? Well, probably if you're a food scientist or nutrition enthusiast, you might do that. Maybe not, but it was new. And the point is that instead of focusing only on carbs, protein, fat, and those, NOVA looks at how our food is made, whether it's fresh, whether it's minimally altered. Let's take an apple, for example. An apple itself is not processed. Mother Nature made it for us, right? But you might have applesauce. And if you make that at home, it's basically apple in a pot. And you might add sugar to it. And you might do something to it. And that's processing in its most homemade form. But you might find them in some pureed, go-go squeeze is one that comes to mind because we get that sometimes. Go-go squeeze pouches, with nothing in them but the ingredients that they come from, but they are packaged. They've definitely been processed. They've got some nice shiny labels and marketing on the front. And you might also find yet another product that has apple in it, where the apple's been broken down, reassembled, additives and preservatives added, and it might be like an apple-flavored fruity snack. And I'm not here to judge that at the moment, but that's where things get interesting. Those are the different layers of food processing and sort of this look at processing as a whole and the NOVA system of classification. So there are 4 groups, as I mentioned, from least to most processed. Very basic definitions here for you. Group 1 is considered unprocessed or minimally processed foods. So think fresh fruits, vegetables, whole grains, egg, milk. Think of those things. Group 2 are processed culinary ingredients. So think oils and butter and sugar and salt. Things that are derived typically from Group 1 foods, but that we use to prepare dishes and cook with in general. I'm simplifying this just a little bit for the purpose of today so we don't dig too deep and we actually bring it into our lives. Group 3 are processed foods that are like canned beans, cheeses, freshly baked bread. Those are typical things in Group 3, and we're already in 3 of 4. They combine sort of Group 1 and Group 2 foods with minimal processing. So think of like a loaf of bread from the bakery. They may have flour and water and salt and yeast put together for you in a bakery. And that's sort of versus a packaged white bread with a long ingredient list, for example. And then there's Group 4, considered the ultra-processed foods. This is like sugar-sweetened sodas or the low-calorie or non-calorie sweetener sodas for that matter, packaged snacks, flavored yogurts, ready-to-eat meals. They typically contain additives, emulsifiers, preservatives, other things like that in them. And here's the key. Nova focuses on the extent and the purpose of the processing, not specifically on the nutritional value of the food. And that's where things get murky for us because not all UPFs or ultra-processed foods are created equal. Some ultra-processed foods can fit right into a healthy diet, and I would argue a case that any basically could fit and not do that much damage if it's not that frequent. But let's think about this for a second. Some of the ultra-processed foods might crowd out some of the other nutrient-dense foods in your diet. So something to remember, this is not about good versus bad, and a lot of people will go contrary to this idea, but I want to suggest that it's not good versus bad. Olive oil, as an example, which is a group 2, is processed. And if it's cold pressed, it may be less processed, but still fit group 2, right? But it has beneficial properties to our health, our nutrition. It also has a palatability and acceptance that go with other nutrients and other nutritious foods in our diet. And you might look at a protein bar, which would fall into group 4, which might be convenient, but might not actually be inherently evil, even though I just said group 4 ultra-processed food. It's about how often and how much we rely on those foods that matters, what the ingredients that went into them, the degree of processing, and of course the key ingredients as well. Our job isn't to demonize, but to understand, adapt, and make choices that are beneficial for our own health. So are all foods that are considered ultra-processed bad? I think you know my answer to that. And aren't all foods that are less than 3 ingredients, aren't those good for us? Well, it's not really that simple. And I'm really into simplifying things in general, but oversimplification at the risk of misinforming in this case, or assigning a morality to food like you're good and you're bad, is not a great approach. But we can figure this out together, I assure you that. An ultra-processed food that could fit into a healthy diet, some examples could be like a fortified whole grain cereal, potentially, or a plain Greek yogurt that might have some added probiotics in it. Those would fall into ultra-processed, and we may or may not choose to include those in our diet, depending on a number of things. And simple foods that aren't healthy unto themselves, or that you might want to monitor the amount or when you include it. For example, lard and sugar come to mind. They're both minimally processed, certain varieties of them. They're both minimally processed, but they're not beneficial to our health. And most of us need to watch how much of those, and I would say the added sugar is one we really want to cue into, how much goes into our diet. So let's now shift gears and talk about why this matters to your health and how we can make better sense of food processing of the ultra kind. Let's talk about the ROIs, or the returns on investment, and the benefits to your health from knowing and applying this information, and perhaps working to unprocess your diet to an extent, and also check and verify and maybe pat yourself on the back on the great things that you're already doing in this arena. So in order to do this, we need to think about food like this. Food isn't just fuel. It is nutrients, and it's also information and communication to our entire body and to our body system. Food has its own language. I like to think like that. Every bite you take sends messages to our body about how to regulate energy, how to manage inflammation, how to repair cells, and even how quickly or slowly you utilize blood sugar and how quickly or slowly you age. So this is why understanding ultra-processed foods, or the UPFs, matters. It's definitely not about fear. It definitely is about clarity. So imagine your body like a thriving city. That's how I like to think of it. You've got a whole bustling metropolis. It's kind of superhero-y, and that's okay. But fresh and whole foods are the well-planned streets. They're the efficient public transport of great nutrients. They provide the clean air and the reliable utilities. Everything flows smoothly through that well-planned city. Ultra-processed foods, they're sort of the shortcuts. They can go through the back alleys. They can go faster and more conveniently sometimes. But if your entire city runs on shortcuts, things start to break down. You might get traffic jams. You might get pollution. You'll certainly get wear and tear on those side streets and alleyways. And that's what happened inside our bodies when UPFs dominate our diet. Not when they sneak in or they're tactfully put in on occasion, but when they dominate our diet. So, benefit one of reducing or limiting the ultra-processed foods in your diet: slow your biological aging. In other words, excess ultra-processed foods are like a fast-forward button on your body, and they appear to increase biological aging. In a study just published last year in 2024 in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, the researchers found that high ultra-processed food consumption was linked to accelerated biological aging. It was measured through using a number of circulating blood biomarkers like inflammatory markers, lipid profiles, and metabolic indicators. So this isn't just about wrinkles or gray hair. We're talking about changes that happen deep within our cells during aging, how our cells function, how they repair, and even how long they live. So think of your cells like little clocks or timekeepers, really. And when they're nourished with whole foods, primarily, rich in antioxidants and fiber and healthy fats and the nutrients they need, they tick along steadily and they can manage the wear and tear more efficiently. But diets high in ultra-processed foods seem to hit that fast forward button on these biological clocks, your little timekeepers. The additives, the preservatives, the lack of protective nutrients, like antioxidants and other things, may accelerate the oxidative stress, the inflammation, the endothelial dysfunction, all these things leading to faster cellular aging. So that's number one. Number two, the reduction of ultra-processed foods, or paying attention to limiting them, can help decrease chronic disease risk. So you can decrease the hidden wear and tear on your body and increase the potential for protection, health support against chronic disease that happens with time. A key paper that was recently published called an umbrella review of meta-analyses. That's a review of reviews of the highest order from clinical nutrition, showed that diets high in ultra-processed foods were associated with increased risk of obesity, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes. And here's the twist. Sometimes we think of ultra-processed foods as, well, they're just empty calories, there's just excess sugar or fat. But they actively contribute to biological stress that wears down our body systems over time. And it changes how we process the calories, not just that they're there, and ultimately increases chronic disease risk. The UPFs, the ultra-processed foods, can disrupt hormonal signals like insulin and leptin. Leptin is the I'm hungry hormone. They can impact our gut microbiome from various additives and emulsifiers, not to mention the low fiber content typically found in ultra-processed foods. And they can increase inflammation through refined sugars, the unhealthy fats, and other additives. So picture this. You're driving a car that's designed for the smooth roads, that bustling metropolis, but you keep taking it off-road through the bumpy terrain, the potholes, the uneven paths, and over time, your tires start wearing down faster. The suspension, you start noticing things more, the bounce, your suspension weakens, and your engine gets really strained. And that's what it looks like the ultra-processed foods are doing to our system in excess. They're sort of like the rough roads, and they're rough on our metabolism. And our metabolism isn't designed for just combating constantly that wear and tear, that disrupting hormonal function, the blood sugar imbalances, and even the impact on our gut health. The next benefit is beyond the physical and is mental. The mental health connection that has been emerging in the research. So research is also pointing to links between ultra-processed foods and mental health issues like depression and anxiety. Some ultra-processed foods can create spikes and crashes in our blood sugar. You may have experienced that before, due specifically to their impact on blood sugar and also the hormones like insulin. They can disrupt the gut-brain connection, and they can fuel inflammation, all of which can affect mood and cognitive function. This connection between the gut and the brain, often called the second brain, our gut, is really important. So imagine trying to focus on an important project with your phone constantly buzzing, lights flickering, background noise blaring. It's probably happened to you. It's happened to me. That's what ultra-processed foods can do to your brain's focus mode, making it harder to regulate your emotions and your energy. And numero cuatro, number 4, how about weight, calories, and appetite? You may have heard a little bit about this. An very important randomized controlled trial led by Kevin Hall at the NIH in 2019 came out and found, and this was very compelling, it got a lot of news coverage at the time, that people who ate ultra-processed diets consumed 500 more calories per day on average than when they were eating minimally processed foods. Here's the kicker. It was without even realizing it. So they didn't feel hungrier. The meals were matched for calories and macronutrients and sugar and fat and all this in the study and fiber. So what was the difference between the two diets? It was the level of processing. The participants actually gained statistically significantly more weight on the ultra-processed diet, and they lost weight when they went on the less processed or unprocessed diet, despite having unlimited food in both scenarios. And recently, a 2024 study, so 5 years later, a Japanese study sort of replicated these findings with a twist. The participants again consumed more calories and gained more weight on the ultra-processed food diet. But the researchers also observed that they ate faster eating speeds, and reduced satiety signals, reduced signals coming forth to say, you're done, I'm not hungry anymore. So this suggests that it's not just what we eat, but how those UPFs, the ultra-processed foods, can influence our brain's natural cues for hunger and fullness. And it's amplifying that overeating without us even noticing. And the final benefit or ROI I want to share about reducing the ultra-processed foods in our diet is to help foster a better gut connection, your inner ecosystem, the garden that's growing between your mouth and your colon. The gut, which is called our second brain, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, is crucial. Our ultra-processed foods often lack the fiber and nutrients that nourish the trillions of microbes living in your digestive system. And instead, the higher sugar, the fat, the additives, they often feed the bad guys. I'm reluctant to use the word bad guys because, again, I don't want to moralize it, but the less helpful bacteria in our gut. And they can lead to an imbalance called dysbiosis. So think of your gut like a lush garden. The garden is the analogy I love to think of our gut between our mouth and our colon. And whole foods are like the sunlight, the water, the rich soil that's created through the nutritious whole foods, through plants, through the fibers, through the prebiotics that feed the probiotics, the healthy bacteria, and they help the good bacteria thrive. And the ultra-processed foods come in and they sort of like leave a little bit of chemical runoff. They increase inflammation at times. They increase sugar in the diet or increase chemicals, can create some stressors that over time affects the vibrant diversity that should be there. And they leave a little bit of a more fragile ecosystem. Maybe it's more prone to weeds, can we say? Like inflammation or digestive issues, symptoms, maybe immune system problems as well. So there you go. Biological aging, chronic disease risk, mental health, gut balance, weight. That's enough to scare you, right? And it just might. And I shared these with you, however, not to do that, but rather to empower you to make and to see how you can make informed choices in your own life during your waking minutes. I promise, I swear. And these studies aren't here to scare you. They just sort of expand our knowledge about processing this sort of new world only in the last 15 years, the impact of it on our health. So to me, and I hope for you moving forward, because that's the direction we're going, they're like traffic signs on the road. They're not meant to restrict you, but to guide you safely ahead, hopefully, and to make choices that can balance each other out and foster good health overall. So the goal isn't about some magical end or perfection as the outcome or all whole, natural, fresh foods all the time, but it is about awareness where we understand about ultra-processed foods and what they do beyond just like adding calories or sugar, fat, or additives. In that way, we can then gain power to make choices that support our long-term health without feeling overwhelmed. We can get through the groups 1, 2, 3, 4, incorporate all of them probably to an extent in our life and in our busy lives, I should say. And your plate doesn't have to be some perfect model or every plate on every day. It just needs to tell the right story for you most of the time. And knowing that you do have some say-so about that bustling metropolis, that magical city inside of you. Okay, so that may have been a lot to take in, but let's shift gears now for just a moment. And it's time for our mindful minute, our brief pause that we get to reset and recharge and connect and reconnect with ourselves. Think about this time as a small, powerful way to unprocess, if you will, not just about our diet, but about our minds right now as well. It's a chance to clear some of the mental clutter and create space for clarity. So wherever you are, please find a comfortable position. Feel your feet on the ground. So if your legs are crossed, uncross them right now. Rest them flat and steady and feel balanced. Let your hands relax in your lap or on your sides. And if you feel comfortable, gently either close your eyes or soften your gaze downward. Let's start with one deep, intentional breath in through the nose and exhale through the mouth. And feel your body settle. Okay, let's begin. Simply notice the moment as you're breathing. Maybe the gentle rise and fall of your breath. There's no need to change anything, just observe it as you relax. Now tune into the rhythm of your breathing. Think of maybe waves gently rolling in and out at the ocean. Let each exhale soften any tension in your shoulders or your jaw or your forehead. And one final deep breath. Inhale fully. Exhale completely. And there we are. Just a minute. But sometimes that's all it takes to feel a little more present and a little more grounded. Now let's carry that sense of awareness forward as we unprocess not just our thoughts, but our approach to food. And I'm going to offer you some practical tips you can use in your everyday life. Thank you for sharing that mindful minute with me today. Now that we've unpacked, or rather unpackaged, the why behind ultra-processed foods and how they can affect our health, let's shift to the how. How do we take all this information and make it work in real life? Because knowing is great, but doing is where we can make a real impact on our health. So I call this framework I'm about to propose to you the new 3 R's, kind of a nod to the reading, writing, and arithmetic of days gone by. But this time it's about how we can make food choices smarter, simpler, and more aligned with what supports your health. So here it is. The 3 R's are rid, restock, reorganize. And I'm going to go briefly through them today. And in a future episode, a next episode, I'm going to go in a little more depth to these. Number 1 is rid. And within rid, I say rethink, reduce, remove. So that's a lot of R's, but rid is the topic. This isn't about some idealized pantry of perfection or cutting out every single processed food that you enjoy. Maybe you've tried that before. In fact, I've worked with a lot of people who say, I got rid of all the packaged foods and now I don't have anything in the house to eat. So then you end up restocking it. But this is really about noticing the ones that sneak into your routine without adding much value. So this is the rid phase. It is about tossing or donating certain items and keeping others. So think of it sort of like spring cleaning. So how do you do that? Well, you're going to rethink. You're going to look at the foods in your pantry cupboards, take them out, put them on the countertop. It's a good opportunity to wipe out the interior spaces of your cupboards and counters anyway. So start by asking, do I really enjoy this? Is this just a habit I have? Where did I get this maybe? Some of our foods hang around from holidays and gatherings. Maybe it's a bag of chips you automatically grab when you're stressed, or a sugary coffee creamers that have become part of your morning ritual without a second thought. So rethink those. Then reduce. You don't have to go cold turkey. If you're drinking soda every day, what would it look like to have just that soda a few times a week? So think about reducing in this rid phase. Small steps can make a big impact over time. And if you are done with it, then move toward the next part of rid, which is removing it. So pick one thing, or could be a few, to rid. But think about the swaps in, which we'll get to in the second R in a second. So when we get rid of something, and maybe just focus on one. Instead of packaged muffins, maybe overnight oats become your prep for breakfast instead. Instead of flavored yogurts, maybe you opt for plain yogurts with fresh berries and a drizzle of honey. So this is about progress and taking steps in the rid. Steps you can do one by one. Rid helps reduce that fast forward effect on aging I talked about before. When we clear out the foods that accelerate oxidative stress and inflammation, even the small changes can help slow down that internal fast forward on our cells. So number 2, first we had rid, now we have restock. We're going to rebuild with purpose, so restocking. Once you've cleared out a little bit of space, the next step is to restock with foods that nourish you. So first think of foods that are like anchor foods. Foods that anchor your meals, like whole grains or eggs or fresh or frozen vegetables, beans and nuts. They're versatile and they can form the base of so many meals. So think first of those anchor foods. And then continue to restock by considering smart swaps. So if you love crunchy snacks and you're ridding some of those in that previous step, maybe try some roasted chickpeas or some popcorn or some baked chips, something maybe made at home with a dash of salt and some olive oil spritzed on, like my grandfather used to do. If you crave something sweet, maybe it's dark chocolate with a handful of almonds, or your homemade trail mixes, or better choices along that category. So it's about restocking. And don't forget to lean into convenience, but with a twist. Pre-chopped vegetables, or you can do it at home if you have time, or pre-cook, cook a batch of quinoa or grains for several days or even the week. Convenience doesn't have to come in a package. It can come from a little bit of planning ahead and utilizing some of this in the restock. And this ties back to our health in this way. The restock helps us reduce chronic disease risk by filling your kitchen with foods that stabilize blood sugar. They support heart health. They improve your metabolic resilience. You're not just swapping foods. You're restocking and reshaping your body's response to stress, to sugar, and to inflammation. So the final in the 3 R's, rid, restock, and it's reorganize. Number 3, set yourself up for success. Our environment, the environment we live in, how we organize our foods, how we put our furniture, we can talk about feng shui another day, but our environment shapes our habits more than we think. And a few small tweaks can make healthy choices, easy ones. So maybe try a pantry refresh. After you've taken it out, you've rid, you restocked a little bit, make sure to put the whole foods and those anchor foods front and center. Your nuts, your seeds, your dried fruit, your whole grain crackers, put them front. Move the less nutrient dense, because let's face it, we're going to have snacks. We're going to have some packaged foods. We probably have more than just us in our family many times. Move them out of direct sight if they're less nutrient dense. Out of sight, out of mind really does work to an extent, but move the things that are nutrient dense forward. And then establish an upgraded flow for your fridge, your freezer. I call this the fridge flow, the fridge and freezer flow. So you can organize your fridge so that the fresh stuff is the first thing you see. If that means moving things out of the crisper up front and center, or having clear glass containers with your berries or pre-cut vegetables, do it. Having hard-boiled eggs that can be grab and go can be a game changer. And create some snack stations. 1 in 4 of our calories these days is done snacking. And if you want a nutritional upgrade, that's a good place to work on it. So create like snack baskets or snack drawers or shelves that are filled with the nourishing items. So you don't just go to the world of food in the pantry or the world of food in the fridge, but you have some nourishing, easy options. So maybe some of those single-serve hummuses with some whole grain crackers or some veggies that are cut up, or little bags of trail mix that you can bag yourself, and increasingly you can buy already pre-portioned for you. So this isn't just about kitchen organization either. This has a mental health effect as well, and that's how it ties to our health. Reorganizing can reduce our decision fatigue, which can impact our mental health. So think about the hundreds of choices, micro decisions you make every single day. You're making a lot of them around food without even thinking about it sometimes. By simplifying your environment, putting the things you can choose up front, you're making it easier to choose the foods that support better mood, better focus, better emotional well-being. So why this all matters is because it all ties into those ROIs that I was talking about before, the health benefits. It's about taking the science and turning it into real, practical, and doable action. Our biological aging, our chronic disease risk, even our mental health, and perhaps our weight too. So ultimately, this isn't just about food. It's about being in control, which sometimes it feels like there's a lot of things we don't have control. It's about getting some control over this. It's about being confident, and it's about being clear. That helps make health feel more manageable and less complicated. shifting from confusion to clarity, from overwhelm to owning those decisions. So as you think about your own day, your 1,000 waking minutes, I'd like to encourage you to ask yourself, what's one small change you could make to using this sort of rid, restock, reorganize method in your life today, this week? Because again, it's not about some absolute idealized environment that you're going to create or a destination that you're heading toward, but about being intentional about your choices, about feeling a little more in control in a world where so many aspects can feel not much that way or in our control at times. So as we wrap up today's episode, I want to bring it back to you, your choices, your kitchen, your life. What's the one small change that can make this week of unprocessing your diet and maybe unprocessing some of our thoughts about this world of ultra-processed foods and how you might have thought of it before? What can you do? Maybe it's trying a new whole food or doing a bit of that rid, restock, reorganize, and reorganize maybe just your snack drawer. Maybe you start there. Maybe it's swapping in for one of the ultra-processed foods that come into your diet on a regular basis. Think about where they sneak into your day without much thought and start there. What little shift might you make? Again, not overhauling. It takes methodical, systematic steps to sort of get toward a place where you can feel really comfortable and about planting small seeds that can grow into a big habit. Think about that gut, your garden. Plant those small seeds also in your habits. So as a recap for today, we explored ultra-processed foods and what they are. So I tried to simplify the definition, but be totally straightforward and accurate, hopefully, in portraying why they matter and how we can make simple, sustainable changes to reduce the ultra-processed foods in our diet. There's no question that there's so many that are available today. It can be mind-boggling, but also through our rid, restock, reorganize, we can connect these to our real health outcomes, like slowing our biological aging, reducing chronic disease risk, and supporting our mental well-being as well as healthy weight management. So it's about progress, something I very often talk about. We're all works in progress. And in a next episode, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into the rid, restock, reorganize, because a lot of clients I've worked with over the years and a lot of people ask about, like, how do I get into that daily rhythm? Tell me a little bit more about that. So we'll look a little bit more about how to navigate maybe grocery store shopping, how to manage some of our food choices when life gets busy, ways to unprocess our pantry a little more specifically, and your plate without feeling restricted. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a practice. It's going to be doable, something maybe, hopefully even fun, I hope as well. Thank you for sharing a few of your 1,000 waking minutes with me today. And if this episode was helpful to you, I encourage you to share it with a friend. Please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts if you haven't already. And always you can connect with me at wendybazilian.com, and you can write me at 1kwm@wendybazilian.com. I'd love to hear from you. I'm Wendy Bazilian, and until next time, be well. Thank you for tuning in to 1,000 Waking Minutes. A huge thank you to our amazing collaborators, including our production and marketing teams, and Gabriela Escalante in particular. To the ultra-talented Beza for my theme music, my lifelong friend and artist, Pearl Price Photography and Design, to Daniel Ballantyne, Jen Nguyen, Joanna Powell, and of course my family, and everyone working tirelessly behind the scenes. And to you, our valued listeners, I so appreciate your support. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving a comment, writing a review, and giving 1,000 Waking Minutes, that's us, a 5-star rating. And please hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Please follow and stay connected at wendybazilian.com. And don't forget to share with your friends. Your support helps us grow and bring you more great content. Until next time, find some simple opportunities to optimize those 1,000 waking minutes each day.
I'm saying yes to better days, yes, I'm on